Things are moving too fast. You need news as it breaks to stay ahead. Dow Jones Newswires provides real-time financial news vital to today's businesses.
Consolidation is a reality for the steel industry.
You get access to that comprehensive coverage with CNBC's partnership with Dow Jones Newswires. Get the news as it breaks.
They might delist the company.
For definitive business and markets coverage in real time, Dow Jones and CNBC, the world leader in business news.
I'm the type who leads from the front.
When you delegate, you need also to empower.
You have to be very honest.
The key is also to be very flexible.
Encouraging people to take their own destiny in their hands.
To bring the best out of every person.
Find out what manage really means. Every week, Asia's top CEOs and business leaders give Christine Tan their own personal definition. Managing Asia. Weekends at these times on CNBC.
Well, a new report by human resource firm Mercer shows that jobs are up and wages are rising here in Singapore. The survey covers 500 companies across 10 industries. 56% of the companies said they increased their headcount in the first quarter of this year. Salary scales are projected to rise around 3.9% this year on average, and industries such as the pharmaceutical, health and consumer goods industry stood out in terms of higher pay. Well, the report also showed that more firms are adopting long-term incentive plans to reward its top management. Well, Ajit Nambiar is Human Capital Product Solutions Leader at Mercer, Human Resource Consulting Asia Pacific. He joins us here in our studio. Ajit, that's a really long title, isn't it?
I know, it's quite a mouthful.
First of all, tell us, what are the broad economic trends that influence how salaries move in Singapore?
Right. We do considerable work in the area of compensation modeling and forecasting. There are three factors which we consider really important when you look at compensation movements. One is economic growth. Second is industry. Right. We do considerable work in the area of compensation modeling and forecasting. There are three factors which we consider really important when you look at compensation movements. One is economic growth. Second is industry growth, and third is movement in the consumer price index or inflation. Now, if I drill down to Singapore, what we see is that the economic growth is forecasted at about 6%. Now, that's influenced by the stellar performance in the manufacturing industry, or the goods producing industry, and the services industry. Now, if you relate that to compensation, what happens is when you're talking about industry growth, it means expansions, and to sustain expansion, you need manpower. And that creates opportunities, and that's where movement of people comes in, and that's one of the reasons why company managers are under pressure to increase salaries. That's two reasons: industry growth, and which is linked to economic growth. We also see a high amount of correlation with CPI and salary movements. Now, if you look at Singapore this year, the inflation is rising to the extent of 1 to 2% as compared to last year. Now, that's because of the global oil prices. So, for example, you'll hear about fuel increases in Singapore right from January this year. So, companies may need to accommodate that and give increases in terms of transportation allowance, etc., which would also in turn affect compensation. So I would imagine this is a broad aspect we would consider when we're looking at compensation.
Singapore is a very international city, and we have a lot of companies here, multinational companies, regional companies. Did you notice any particular discrepancies between the salary or the headcount intentions in, say, multinational companies and those that are based just here in Singapore?
Well, in terms of pay practice, we notice between multinational companies and local companies. And there we see a differential, actually, wherein we're seeing multinational companies typically paying much more than local companies, on average 8% and above, 8% and above at senior levels, but at the junior levels, typically it seems the local companies appear to pay a bit more than the multinational companies.
Ajit, I want to ask you about this number, 3.9%. This is what you found in your survey, salary increases on average for 2006. 3.9%. Is that good?
Well, compared to last year, it appears to be similar to last year, actually, and it's definitely better than what we had in 2003 during the SARS period, so it's increased. So I would imagine 3.9% is in relation to the economic growth, which is good. And I would imagine the salary pressures are similar to what we experienced last year.
Based on the macroeconomic surroundings, what's the feeling for what kind of salary increases there might be across the board for next year?
Well, our estimates for next year in the range of 4% actually, so in the range of 3.9 to 4% actually.
Break it down into sectors for us. We mentioned some of the highest paying sectors such as the pharmaceutical sector. Why in particular are salaries better in that sector and others such as consumer goods, and which are the lowest paying sectors?
Well, the lowest paying sectors in terms of increments happen to be the electronics manufacturing sector and the logistics sector. Why are increases typically higher in specific industries? It's a function of various aspects. It could be industry growth, how the industry does, how the company does, and how the general incumbent does. So that could be various factors we're looking at there.
Just very quickly, in terms of trends, even if, for example, a company can only offer 3.9% for the annual increase for their workers, what kinds of other incentives are we seeing for companies to make their employees want to stay with that company over the long term?
Right. Well, we've seen two specific trends actually. If you look at top management, now we've seen companies rewarding their top management with long-term incentive, which is typically stock option and stock grants. Last year, approximately 3% of the total pay of top management was stock option and stock grants. We see that figure increase to approximately 7 to 8% this year. So that's a big increase for top management, one. Secondly, we at the sales professional level, we see a lot of emphasis on the variable pay, but that's more on an annual basis rather than a long-term basis.
Very interesting findings. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you very much for your time.
Ajit Nambiar of Mercer Human Resource Consulting, Asia Pacific. Well, a quick check-in on the regional markets for you. First of all, North Asia, if we can take a look at the board there. It is all moving to the downside now. The Japanese market, the topics, has also come back for its afternoon session. Southeast Asia is looking like this. It's been a bit jittery all morning, but now we seem to have a number moving to the upside, the KL Composite, Jakarta and PSE. Let's get a final look at stocks on the move with Lisa Roke in the newsroom. Lisa.
Hey there, Mandy. Well, keeping a very close eye on a couple of stocks in Singapore right now. Fabchem China, remember they were suspended yesterday pending an announcement. Well, the announcement was that they are in exclusive talks with a single party, and now we know who the party is. It is Dyno Nobel of Australia. Right now we've got that stock trading down by about 0.4 of a percentage point, but look at what's been happening to Fabchem, really taking off today. They're an explosive maker. They've been doing better business because of all the exploration activity that's been taking place in China. Fraser Centrepoint Trust IPO hitting the market for the first time today. It was very well subscribed.